How did I meet Tom Joyner? Well, it all started in a 50,000 watt radio station. Actually, I was working in, where was I? I was in Charlotte, I think, and a hurricane had come through, and I decided that it was time for me to come home. I was doing overnights and working on a radio show, Kiss 102. I was doing overnights and I was doing the news for the morning show, and I was exhausted. The hurricane came through, and I just said, I'm tired. And I decided to come home. And in the meantime, I sent out a tape to radio stations in Chicago to come home to. And I got a call. I came home on a Friday. Sunday, I was watching the Bears lose, and I got a call from the program director, Jackie Hasselrig, WGCI AM. And that was the sister station to the big station, WGCI FM, where Tom Joyner was in the afternoon and Doug Banks was in the morning. So Jackie asked me to come in. I went over and I interviewed with her on a Monday, and she hired me to do fill-in stuff for the holidays. And they hired me to eventually to do my own talk show. And I was doing an overnight talk show at WGCI AM, and I had 13 listeners. It was my mom and 12 of her friends who listened to me between midnight and 5 a.m. That went on for several months, and I was really getting no sleep with that as well, because I was trying to have a little social life and, hang out with my friends. So anyway, September, the general manager, Marv Dyson, hey Marv, he came in and fired all of us from the talk station. And he said, we're changing the format, and they didn't know how to sell black talk radio or whatever. So that was the talk amongst the staff that got fired. 4 days later, Marv Dyson called me and said, how you doing? I said, well, I'm getting some sleep, but other than that, and you fired me. And so he said, well, we're going to change that. And so he hired me to come in and work with Tom Joyner. Tom at the time was doing the fly jock thing. He was doing Dallas in the morning and Chicago in the afternoon, flying back and forth. And that was when he became the fly jock. So that's how I started working with Tom. But here's the thing, Tom was flying back and forth, but I was planted in Chicago doing traffic, and I was at the top of the John Hancock building. But when Tom would toss it to me every day to do the traffic reports, for whatever reason, the line was, let's go to the top of the Sears Tower and Sybil Wilkes with traffic. And we did this, and that was our relationship. We talked to each other. We did, back and forth into the traffic reports for months. And then finally, Tom came to visit me, he thought he was coming to visit me, and he called me. He said, Sybil, I'm downstairs. And I said, okay, well, come on up. He said, they said you all aren't here. He went to Sears Tower. I was at the John Hancock, the other big building, but we had a wonderful rapport, and it was all on the air. So let's flash forward a couple of years, and unfortunately, my mother had passed in the meantime. She passed away in January of '93, and Tom called me and said, I know that you're going through a lot of change and everything, but I got an idea. That's when they started. Those words that you hear from Tom Joyner, got an idea. In this case, it changed my life. And he told me that he had a deal to start a syndicated radio show, which was unheard of in urban radio. So he said, I want to talk to you about it. And sure enough, we talked. I talked to Robert Hall, Tom, and they hired me, and they hired Kevin Woodson. Kevin from St. Louis, me from Chicago. And Tom brought us all to Dallas-Fort Worth, and we met the weekend after Thanksgiving. We worked a full month rehearsing the show and deciding how we were going to do and who we were going to interview and how all of this was going to be formatted. But even before we did that, in July, he brought us to Jamaica, I should say. And we all got together. It was Myra J. and Doug Starks, who was his original head writer, and his wife, Yolanda Starks, and Kevin Woodson, and me, and Uncle Butchie. And we found out about how It's Your World was going to happen, and Uncle Butchie came up with all of these great ideas about how the music was going to go. And then, like I said, in November, we came down Thanksgiving weekend, and we started we moved to Dallas, and we started all the rehearsals in that month of December, and then on January 3rd, ta-da, it was magic. Tom Joyner Morning Show started. And it was because we were so innocent, and just so, and all of us had just put our futures and everything into Tom's hands, and never thinking, ever, because this is such a transient business, and never thought that the life of a gypsy going from radio station to radio station was going to put me in a position to work for 25 years. And that day was, like I said, we didn't know what to expect. But here's the thing, Tom, he may not have known how this was all going to go, and even that day, or how it was going to go for the next year or 10 or 20 or 25 years. But he had such a great mind and so creative, and just knew that this was going to be magic. And it was. We had Kevin Woodson doing sports and commentary, and I was doing news, and Tom, and our very first guest that day was the one and only Luther Vandross. And Luther was booked by Yolanda Starks, who was our publicist at the time. And he came in, and I want to say that he was working in San Antonio and drove through the night to be there that morning for the live broadcast. And it wasn't on the phone. He was in the studio. And it was magical. It really was. And it may not have sounded magical because, we were trying to get all the bumps and everything out. But it started just an incredible journey for me, and I think for many others as well. And I can't thank Tom Joyner enough, and I can't thank the listeners enough for sticking with us and giving us the ride of a lifetime. We love you from the Tom Joyner Morning Show.